Welcome to another episode of the Focus Bee Show. Today I'm really excited to be with Michael Perez. Michael is a serial entrepreneur, journalist, radio host, and also the founder and pioneer of the Breaking the 9 to 5 model. Thank you so much for being here with me today, Michael.
Thank you, Katie, for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
Yes, it's fantastic to have you here. The first thing that comes to my mind is, why is it that you created this Breaking the 9 to 5 model?
So it wasn't intentional. It was a byproduct of how I've learned to function within my own lifestyle. So someone who did have ADHD and other learning disabilities as a child, I've eventually learned that engineering my own solutions to my problems worked way better than following what those of authority would tell me. And I got nothing against the schooling system. I've got nothing against any of those processes, but they work for most people. They didn't work for me. And in a way, it was a blessing in disguise that I had to force myself into my own box and engineer my own solutions, because over time that built confidence, where I would constantly stray off the well-worn path and see success. And that made me way more comfortable once I passed academia, once I entered into the business world to do my own model that worked for me. And it's kind of inspired a movement where I do the same, help other people take control of their own financial success and do it in this rather unorthodox way.
Fantastic. Can you tell us a bit more about how this unorthodox ways work?
Sure, of course. So first and foremost, I focus on trades that are highly malleable and adaptable to the environment. So it used to be 30, 40 years ago. You would go to college, you would see what currently the economy is offering. You'd hone in on a very specific trade. You do it for 4 or 5 years. You'd master those skills, and then you head into the workforce. It's changing. It really is. Where technology is is accelerating at an increasing rate, and it's becoming very, very hard for us to know what kind of tools will be needed in the future. And our environment is changing so quickly that investing in a very specific domain of expertise is high risk. And a great example, or a great litmus test to see whether our skill sets are highly adaptable, is right now during COVID, where we're completely shocked. And some of us are doing really well, and some of us aren't doing well at all. Obviously, of course, it depends on what your domain is. But when you have skills like being a programmer, a graphic designer, a writer, and you've designed your services in a way that they're not heavily dependent on your location, and also as a programmer, if the specific skill set I was aiming for is rendered obsolete or doesn't work out as planned, I can easily adjust. So these are the kind of skills that I've focused on as a programmer. I've done a hosting company, web development company. Everything is purely virtual. So the model that I subscribe to is one that's not tied to location, one that I can completely run virtually, where I can hire teams remotely. I can pick up clients remotely. I have met maybe 3 or 4% of my clients, and I work with many of them daily. And even when I used to live in LA, I had clients who lived down the street from me, and I've had great relationships with them. Some of them I've met, but some of them I've never met, and I've worked with them for years. So this is the kind of model where we're heading, where it's completely virtual, it's completely intangible, there are no constraints, and it's essentially a sort of career portfolio. So as a symptom of what I do is the fact that I'm able to travel wherever I want. And people usually say, hey, it's so cool, I wish I could travel like you. What I usually say to that is my focus is not travel. My focus is doing what I really, really love. So for those people who are looking to take care of their own financial success, you got to be careful when you graduate college. It's very enticing. You finish programming for 4 years, studying programming for 4 years, and then you get a $90,000 job, $100,000 job at Google. I do think it's a trap, and I do think that you're being paid to forget about your own dreams. And you get the stability from a 9-to-5 job. You've got your great bonuses, you get your vacation days. After 5, you're done. You get to go home, drink your wine, and watch your football game. I don't know what everyone does. And you can be that kind of person that, you ask them something at 6 o'clock on a Friday and they go, I don't have access to my emails. I'll respond to you on Monday or whatever. And I don't understand that lifestyle. But truthfully speaking, I don't recommend my lifestyle for everyone. And for some people, the 9-to-5 is perfect. If you like that stability, if you look at your job as something clean cut, you do your 9-to-5, you go home, you get to enjoy the rest of your day, that's fine. Unfortunately, and I can't take credit for this, I am just not happy doing that lifestyle. I wake up every morning and I hate it, right? So I don't really have a choice. This is a lifestyle for me where I worked way, way harder in the beginning. And when I graduated college, I got paid. I mean, I worked literally 4 times harder than my colleagues, and I was getting paid a measly under 30K a year salary. And I did that for 2, 3 years. But the model that I've subscribed to is one that will grow exponentially. That, you know, hopefully that's the plan. But when you subscribe to a job, let's say at Google, it's somewhat linear and then it tapers off, right? People do make millions of dollars at Google. Most people don't make more than $500,000. And if people are thinking really, really big, you have to be willing to have the right priorities at the onset. So when you graduate college, your focus should not be making money. Your focus should be going to the trenches to obtain knowledge that makes you a unique asset in your industry so that you can provide a stellar service to those around you. A byproduct of having a very unique service with well-honed skills that's very adaptable will be money. The end goal could be money, but the focus should not be money. The focus should be offering value to those around you. So part of my model is 50% of the day, I do paid work. I subscribe to models initially that keep me self-sustained. My hosting company, for example, it's a residual-based income system. So I can set up one server, I can set up 10 servers, and I can put one person on a server, or I can put 100 people on a server. It's not 100 times more work. Once I get the infrastructure up, I get it all set up, I get 50, 100 people on the server, I'm completely free now to move my focus to something else. I have minimal work, I need to keep those servers up, and it's minimal work for me to replicate the infrastructure to scale up. This keeps me on basic income starting out. Slow, but it's steady and there's traction. Once I get steady income, I get to focus on higher risk, higher reward endeavors. Half of my day, I'm doing free work, and half of my day, I'm doing paid work. Still today, I've been working in the industry for quite a few years. I strictly do half free work because the half free work is what gives me the most return. Paid work is what rationalizes it all. The free work is where the heart is. And when I initially start doing jobs, at least I'm speaking to people who are graduating out of college, I was looking to build connections. So for example, I would see over the weekend, there are a handful of really high traffic sites that are done poorly. And most people would say this is a weird transaction. It's a bad transaction to go ahead and do free work. And I would message someone over the weekend saying, hey, I was free over this weekend. I rebuilt your website. You can have it. I'd have to do it, intelligently so I don't come off as crazy, but that was pretty much how I would frame the conversation. For someone thinking about making dollars, that comes off as a bad idea. Why would you give over a $2,000, $3,000 job for free? In hindsight, those are some of the best clients I've ever built. And the $2,000 I've given up to build a relationship and to establish trust with these clientele is insignificantly small. And sure, it doesn't work every time, but the point here is it doesn't have to work every time. It needs to work only 20% of the time. Because this is how I entered the industry. This is how I entered the workforce. So once I've had that stability from between my hosting company and got my web development company, keep, up and running, now I get to focus on bigger projects, establishing my name on brand, going into media, working in journalism, learning how to broadcast information effectively. So now that's currently my focus right now, to work in journalism.
You shared a lot. You shared a lot of really insightful things. One of them that I think would be around entrepreneurship and the price of entrepreneurship at the beginning. It's a heavily cost in terms of time and energy, but at the end it pays off. And it's also the price of freedom somewhere. And then something else that you mentioned that was really interesting is...
Sorry, I spoke for a while.
is how the balance between the different skills that you need and how flexible it is to be an entrepreneur in terms of the times and the skill you need and the location basis, and how that sort of pays off in comparison with having a fixed job at Google, for example, which you kept mentioning. I'm curious, how do you manage to stay focused on your different projects? Because you have a lot of different things going on that you shared with us. How do you manage to stay focused?
Right. So, you know, I don't always do a great job focusing on one thing, but I've trained myself to focus on many things. So when I am coding, got a podcast running, I got my emails and I'm doing two different websites at the same time. But I'm still trying to stay highly efficient. That's the objective here. And in terms of, that's a very good question. At a more of a macro scale, you want to be very careful not to spread yourself thin, because otherwise you do too much of nothing. So the way I look at it is I pick focuses. So I have an objective here. I'm trying to build, just recently, my last 6 weeks, 30% of my time was focused on building online infrastructure, like news systems, essentially. I was building 2 or 3 news systems that I want to broadcast, Middle Eastern news and American politics. So I would focus heavily on those for a good 6, 7 weeks, get that cleanly done, and then move on to the next thing. So eventually, I've got a pretty wide array of domains that I operate in, but I really try to get a certain level of ownership, of mastery on the specific domain before I move on to the next. I might spend 6 months working on marketing. I might spend 6 months learning how Google Ads work, how social media works, but I really try to focus to the point, and I think the line here for me is where I can now hire someone to take over, and I have enough expertise to navigate the project as a leader. That to me is a threshold where I know I've reached it and I can step out and move my attention elsewhere.
Great point. I love this. How do you know when you reach that level of leadership? So how do you know when you're in a space where you feel so comfortable that you can sort of delegate and manage others? Because it's a sort of interesting threshold when you realize you're in that leader position. Can you tell us
Right.
when you realize this and how you realize this?
It's when you're able to discern nuance and know whether if something is complicated and you got to respect the people you're giving the job to and give them their time to do it, or whether like they're slacking off. And I think when I'm able to have a nuanced conversation and I can really discern a certain degree of technical expertise to the point where I can pick apart their work and fine tune it, that feels like I have control of the situation here and I can put my stamp of approval on the work I do. I know that might not be a very specific answer, but you do know when you reach a point that you have a very strong working understanding. And I guess doing a lot more, like, it's always a cost benefit here. So I assess here, if I invest more energy in furthering my knowledge in this domain, like, will I still be getting that same lump sum in return, or is it going to start diminishing? Look at it like, I don't know, why we dig into the ground to pull fuel. We invest one unit of energy and we can get back 20. But eventually when that well is going dry and we have to invest 10 units of energy only to get back 11, it's not necessarily a very good transaction. So the point I'm making here is that when I'm starting to spend a lot more time and only getting a little more benefit, that's kind of where I start to divert my attention. It's always good to, as a leader, it's really good to have a very good understanding and a very strong working understanding of what your workers are actually doing. Because again, it's really important to respect the people who are doing their job. Things are technical and things need time, but you need to know when they're doing their job or when they're just wasting your time. So yeah, you got to be able to see that difference.
Absolutely. And I'd like to touch back to something you mentioned at the beginning that I thought was really nice. When you said that, I mean, nice, not really, but when you said that you think that a lot of people that are in these fixed 9 to 5 jobs are actually being paid to ignore their dreams. That's what I mean with not particularly nice, the concept, but nice the way you formulated it. Do you feel that these people know that they're being paid to ignore their dreams and they're willing to take that on? Or do you think that they're really absorbed in the society and they're not aware of this?
So I can't speak for everyone, but what I could speak for myself is that I would imagine people see the 9 to 5 as being how things should be. Sometimes people might have something in them that makes them want to do something greater and something bigger, but it never necessarily comes to fruition, or they never get a taste of it to want to chase it more. So to them, and I don't think it's necessarily nefarious of Google in any sense, but I mean, that is what it's worth. How much is your time worth? That's what we're going to pay you. But I think when you build something that's yours, you end up finding a certain passion that you can't find otherwise. You might like programming, but it doesn't necessarily mean you want to spend the rest of your life calibrating a GPS, right? And you know, when you do what you love, and I truly believe this, you end up finding a unique way to do it, and it becomes less like work. It's not a burden. It's something you wake like. I don't understand the concept of vacation, right? What am I running away from? Why do I want to go on vacation? Everything I'm doing is so that I can do more work. To some people, that sounds crazy or that sounds sad or depressing, but to me, it's my passion, it's my joy. And I'm always trying to do as much work as possible. It's because I'm doing what I love doing. It's not because I'm actually programming. It's because I'm expressing myself in a way that makes me happy. And I'm building something that's mine, that I'm proud of, that, that I feel like is helping other people and offering value to those around me. You can get that satisfaction from working in someone else's dream, but it all depends on how we're wired, and that's what I think it really comes down to, right? I cannot take responsibility for the synapses and that fire in my brain. I could just as easily wake up one day and be like, what the hell am I doing? I'm spending so much time and effort. It's 2 a.m. It's 2:30 in the morning. I should be asleep. What am I doing here, right? I can easily wake up one morning and have that mindset, but I just don't. So, for whatever reason, the 9 to 5 is not for me. And if other people relate to that thought, then this is the way it should be.
I like it, this sort of comparison between the 9 to 5 and being an entrepreneur. It's such a different world in many ways. Do you feel that other people that want to be entrepreneurs like yourself have things in common with you? Do you see certain characteristics that make people hate this 9 to 5 construct and want to function or work in the same way as you do as an entrepreneur, have their own business, be founders? What do you think they all have in common in some ways?
I don't know. I don't know. But, I do look around and I see a lot of people happy with the 9 to 5, right? And I'm sure my lifestyle would drive them crazy. I'm sure of that. Because to most rational people, the amount I'm investing is not worth the return. But how I see it is, it's not worth the return now, but it will be worth the return in 5, 10 years from now. And in 5, 10 years from now, when, hopefully I do reach that financial level and making a lot of money and doing what I really, really love, I'll have the best of both worlds. And I think you got to be willing to give something up to get there. And, here's the thing, right? Google or not, it's 9 to 5 or creating your own path, we all want success in life, right? But that's not the question we should be asking. The question we should be asking is, what are you willing to give up to get it, right? Everyone wants money. Everyone wants a nice car. Everyone wants this or that. But are you willing to give up your social life for 8 months to get it? Are you willing to move back to your mom's house for the next year so that you don't have to pay rent, so that you can afford to learn something on your own? Because you got the world at your fingertips on YouTube. Are you willing to do that for 9 months to learn how to code on your own, right? The real question is, what are you willing to give up to get it? Are you willing to give up on your 8 hours of sleep? You can easily survive on 6 hours of sleep. So that's what it really comes down to. Whether you want to make the best impression at Google, whether Google or whether Amazon, I don't mean to pick on Google, whether working for an established company is simply a means to an end, is fine as well, right? As long as you have an idea of where you want to be and you're making smart decisions to get there. Because the problem here is that to get caught in the trap, a lot of us have to pay rent. We don't have the luxury to move in with our parents for the next 8, 9 months. As much as that might not sound like a luxury, it really is. Some people have to pay rent, right? And therefore you're constantly focused on next month. And you're held hostage where you really can't get out of that bubble and start making money a lot easier by making bigger risks and higher reward investments. So I think for those who are struggling with such short-term vision, you kind of want to start asking yourself where your priorities are. Because if you do want to get out of that bubble, you're going to have to give up on quite a bit, right? And if you could move in with your parents, that might sound like a horrible thing, but in 3, 4, 5 years from now, when you have control of your financial success and you're looking back, that thing that seemed horrible might have been the best decision you ever made.
Sure. It sounds to me like one thing that entrepreneurs might have in common is passion, because you're saying that they are willing, or they should be willing, to take off 6 months to just focus on learning new skills. And I feel you can really only do this if you're really passionate about it. And also, like you said, in the long term, it will pay back, hopefully, financially. But something else that's more important is that you're enjoying the journey. So you keep saying how you love it so much that you want to, keep working until almost 2 a.m. on a regular basis, or learn all these skills, or work as much as possible. So I feel that the enjoyment part is also non-neglectable, because if one of your businesses didn't work out financially, for instance, you will still have learned all those skills, and you will still have enjoyed it while you're learning, and still learned a bunch of other lessons. So it's sort of always, everything is always worthwhile
Of
anyway.
course. And I will say that the journey is always rough. It really is. But for some unexplainable reason, it's not that if you love it, it's not hard. It's that if you love it, you're always somehow finding yourself recharged. I'm completely burnt out. It's been a really hard day. I wake up in the morning and I'm just like, yeah, man, let's do this again, right? It doesn't make sense to do any other way. And I think that's the difference of something you really love. It's that it's not that you will always burn out, but you'll always find yourself magically recharged in a short period of time. And I forgot the second thing I was going to say. It'll hit me. But yeah, I mean, that's all. That's what it comes down to. It's this endless struggle for what you love doing.
Great point. And the passion and the strive is clearly very present in everything that you're saying. Do you have a specific affirmation, sentence, picture, something that you keep in mind, so that when you're struggling, when it gets really hard, or you've had lots of rejections, what is it that you say to yourself, or that you envision?
Oh yeah, I have very clear visions about the things that I want. I relive them in my mind every day. And I'll give you an example. So when I used to live in San Diego, I would run all the way up La Jolla, the very top of the hill. And there's the most beautiful houses there by the ocean. And I told myself I have 5 years to get a house like that, where I get to see the ocean, get to be on a mountain, and my whole floor will be covered with glass walls. So when I do work, I'll have half of my biology work, half of my computer science work, and I'll have a completely clear view of the ocean. That is a thought in my mind that I play every single day, because and one day I hope to get there, and that's right now, in terms of like 5-year plan, that is something that's on my mind.
And do you not feel that if you were to get there, you'd be super excited on the moment, but then it would lose its magic, sort of?
Every milestone that I've dreamt to reach, once I reach it, I'm already stressed, because my next milestone, my next thing that keeps me happy, this might be a curse, I don't even know, but you're right. I mean, you're never happy. There's a certain hunger in there and a thirst in it. Maybe I will be. Maybe when I hit a certain milestone, I'll be like, oh, this is great. But to be honest with you, I've barely started my journey. And I really mean that. My journey in terms of business and entrepreneurship hasn't even started. I'm still constantly feeling the pressure to make up for some imaginary lost time. That's kind of how I see it. I'm still like, in my mind, still in catch-up mode. I wake up every morning, I'm almost a little stressed out, because I kind of want to get a whole bunch of headway going. And it's a good feeling though, because after 6 months to a year, you look back and you're like, wow, like just 6 months ago, and I wasn't here, and now I'm doing all this, where it's a completely natural part of my life. There is a hunger and thirst that's I'm still exploring ways to appease it, and I enjoy it.
Yeah, the reason I mentioned this is because on one of my latest interviews with Imogen Roy, we were talking about the difference between the process and the goals, and how it often feels when we actually reach a goal, we're not that happy or that satisfied. We strive towards it, and there's maybe a brief moment of happiness, and then it goes away. And that's why I feel that the fact that you're enjoying it every day, the fact that you're learning new skills, the fact that you're passionate about what you do actually matters a lot more than if or not you get that house. It's great image, it's nice, maybe
No,
continue.
I'm gonna get that house, but it doesn't mean I'm gonna be like I'm done here. But I completely resonate with what you're saying, and I think of it this way, that I don't really care about money. I really don't. But I care about the process of getting it, right? I'm not energized by superficial things. I'm really not. I'm an extremely simplistic person. What I love is the challenge of being able to do it, is the process of making money, right? The money symbolizes the fact that I am able to compete successfully in an open market. And that's what I'm addicted to is, I'm constantly learning more about myself, but at this point, that's kind of how I would see it.
That's a great point. It's all really about the challenge. That's the exciting part. I think I really resonated with that word because that's always been one of my key values, or one of the things that has driven me a lot more than money is the challenge. But you can
Right.
tie them together, of course.
Right. It's kind of like I'm always on a quest to learn more about what I could do and what I'm capable of and testing myself and not allowing and not accepting the fact that I can't do something. And then when I go through the process of failure, and I do notice this as a quality about myself, is when I fail on something, I'm very good, thankfully, and I'm always trying to get better at it, but I seem to do a pretty good job at channeling the pain and letting it kind of catapult me forward in a positive way, where I can see how other people can use pain and it just breaks them down. For me, it makes me double down on how I perceive myself, and it gives me more energy to continue pushing forward. And again, like these are defining moments of a person's characteristics. It's not that we're not going to fail. I don't mean to sound cliche, but failure is a very natural part. It's not like it happens and you just learn to work around it. It literally is a part of the process. The pain that at least I go through when I fail gives me a certain sense of wisdom and understanding that I would not have been able to achieve otherwise. So, I really look at painful moments as like opportunities to get a certain sense of wisdom that'll give me a different way of thinking the next time I tackle the problem.
I think that all the people that are successful out there, all the ones that we think of as successful, they've all had massive failures. You can't get to that place of success
Right.
without the massive failure. You don't even feel the success if you haven't failed because you have nothing to contrast it with.
Right. Right. And like I say this, I mean, some people are lucky, but I believe if you take Elon Musk and you take everything away from him and you throw him on an island and you come back 20 years later, he'll have done it again. Right. It's just, you just keep trying. It's just, and that's it. You keep trying over and over and over and over and over and over. And you're relentless and you're stubborn and you don't give up, but you have the intelligence to know what kind of stubborn elements you should refine and double down on, and once you should learn to give up and move on to something else and use that stubbornness there. If I'm explaining that correctly, because sometimes I will try an idea 2-3 times, and for whatever reason, it's not that I feel like I failed, but I feel like I should refine my idea and kind of pivot. So it's not like I'm trying the same thing 20 times over and it's still failing. But it's that like stubbornness to keep trying to make some sort of these abstract mechanics work in some way or another.
Absolutely. It all sort of ties together nicely once you know how to learn from failure. I'm wondering, could you perhaps give a few pieces of advice for people who might be in a 9-to-5 job, resonate with everything you just said, but have no idea how they could leave, what they can do? What would you tell them?
First, take the bus Monday at 6 a.m. and you're going to see that there are a few people who are not very happy going to work. And ask yourself if you want to be that in 10, 20 years. And if that doesn't scare you, that should scare you a little bit, which is a good thing. And, for those who are in the 9-to-5, who want to get out of it, I would first forget about what makes money. I would first focus on what you really, really love. Let's just say you love taking fancy pictures and being a photographer or whatever. That might not make you good money, right? Fortunately, it's a heavily saturated market, and being a photographer, digital photographer or photo, that might not make you a whole lot of money, but you could use that creative fire and translate it into being a social media marketer, where you're able to take really beautiful pictures and help other companies brand themselves in a very unique way. So you can find ways to channel that energy, create a base of money, and then you can still continue fully doing your passion as a photographer. It makes sense now. You can't be a photographer forever if you're not making any money. But if you have a fallback plan where the skills you get as a photographer translate into another way where you can make money, that's great. Now, to answer your question specifically, these are the kind of ways you want to start thinking. Also ask yourself, you know, what are you willing to give up, right? Write that down on a piece of paper, right? Say, I want this. These are the things that I enjoy. The reason why I can't have this is because these things are in the way. I'm sleeping 12 hours, right? Well, how much do you hate your job right now that you're willing to give up 6 hours for the next 6 months? Also, ask yourself, I'll never move back with my parents. Imagine you were okay with that. I keep picking on these two examples, but because if you don't have to pay rent and you have free food for the most part, you have very little excuses. When you have an internet connection and a laptop, you have the world at your fingertips. So I just think that people who want to get out of the 9 to 5, or people who are in the 9 to 5, you can do this as well. You can have a means to an end. You can start seriously budgeting, taking half of the money and saving it. For 6 months from now, when you decide to quit your job and you give yourself 6 months to learn a trade, right? And when you come home kind of tired, it's your time now. You have from 6 to midnight to drill every single night. You can learn how to learn a whole array of professions online. So, I understand people who have to pay the month's rent, and it's even harder if you have a kid. But if you really want to do it, you can make yourself a very clear and coherent 6-12 month plan. And once you reach that 12 months and you have a new set of skills that allow you to take control of your own financial future, to me, it's a no-brainer. It's 10 times worth it.
Yes, I love what you said about basically using transferable skills. If you love photography, you can be a social media marketer, for example. The two main nuggets here that I think you shared, one of them was transferable skills, and the other one is what are you willing to give up and plan for it, also having a budget and planning for it. So I think this is a fantastic inspiration. If you are out there and you're struggling to quit your 9 to 5, you can also get in touch with Michael Perez. Michael, thank you so much for being here today. How can people find you?
Yeah, so you can find me at michaelperez.com. You can find me on social media as Mikey Perez, MIKEYPERES. Yeah, I wish I talked more about the specific how I 9 to 5 guide, but it's very detail oriented where I talk about specific softwares I use, specific social media channels, how I attract people, how I get clients remotely, how I hire people internally and discern whether they're good candidates or not. But that is a book I'm working on right now, and that will be out shortly.
Amazing, Michael. Thank you so, so much for all your insight. And
thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.